Hey guys, welcome back to another semiconductor episode. Today we're going to take a closer look at the top 500 supercomputers. The new list was just announced, and we see some pretty impressive names in the top three. We see AMD, we see Intel, and we also see Nvidia. So in today's episode, I want to take a closer look at some of the updates here. Even Microsoft, I actually didn't mention, and Microsoft also made the list, and it's one of the first cloud providers to be in the list for a while. So all that in today's episode. So let's get started. All right, first I just want to start off with price action. We can see AMD right now sitting at $120, up roughly 3% on today. The market just seems to be green today, so I don't think there's anything specific that investors are excited opposed to just the overall market and kind of maybe macroeconomics turning around, which obviously bodes well for a lot of companies. Intel is also up roughly 1.6%, sitting at $38.85. And boom, our favorite semiconductor company, well, my favorite semiconductor, NVIDIA, is sitting at $493, up roughly 1.5% as well.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so now let's take a closer look at the list. And the list, for those that are not familiar, reveals the top 500 supercomputers that submit their kind of performance report and everything based on the benchmark that Top 500 has created. This list comes out twice a year. It comes out on November and June. And this is going to be the 62nd edition. Now, the number one position back in June still remains on top, and is still the only exascale machine on the list. And this we're going to see is a fully powered AMD system. It has AMD EPYC CPUs and it has the AMD MI250X. We're going to see the specs of that. And some people might be wondering, hey, Jose, how is NVIDIA not the number one position? Well, we'll talk a little bit about that in today's episode. The second system is actually an Intel full system. It actually includes an Intel CPU and Intel GPUs. And this is the number two spot. This one just came onto the list. It is important to note that this system is still being built, so they only kind of did the testing with roughly half of the final system, and they do believe once the system is finally commissioned, it will reportedly exceed Frontier with peak performance of 2 exaflops when finished. So depending if there's any supercomputers that are going to come out between now and the next list, which is going to be June of 2023, I do believe Intel is going to have the number one position. And obviously this bodes well for like, hey, Intel saying, hey, look, our full system that includes our CPUs, our GPUs, it's what's the number one supercomputer. So I do believe it showcases strong strength on their overall product. Now, I do want to say thank you for the support. I'm trying to hit 30,000 on this channel by the end of the year. So if you haven't, make sure to hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button. I do have weekly exclusive videos. Click the semiconductor membership join button to learn more. Special offer at fool.com/Jose. Free newsletter at josenajarro.substack.com, and free semiconductor news at semiconductorwatch.com. Kind of staying here into Intel, they do mention that in the entire list, 20 new systems use Intel Sapphire Rapid CPUs, bringing the total number of systems using this CPU to 25. They do mention that the Intel Sapphire Rapid CPU is now leading the new CPU among new systems. However, of the 45 new systems on the list, only 4 use corresponding Intel GPUs, with Aurora being the largest by far. And I do want to say, just because 20 use, it doesn't 20 out of the 45 doesn't mean that the other 25 are AMDs. There's a lot of processors in the private market and even the public that the public doesn't see. For example, IBM, numerous ARM CPUs as well. So it's not just Intel versus AMD. There's numerous other processors. There's numerous other accelerators in the private market as well. Now, the one that I found pretty interesting, they do mention that another new system named Ego, installed in the Microsoft Azure cloud in the United States, has taken the number 3 spot. I do believe this bodes well for Microsoft, and it just kind of shows the strength of the United States. United States is in the top 3 systems here, right? The top 3 are actually held by the United States, and this is the highest rank cloud system has ever achieved on the top 500. They do mention that the previous Azure system was the first cloud system ever to enter the top 10 spot at number 10. So we can see Microsoft is not here to play. It's here to it's not playing around, right? Is that the right way I'm trying to say? It's not playing around. They want to showcase their strength, and for them to be in the number 3 spot, it is pretty insane. We've actually heard about this system, the Eagle, before in another episode when we took a closer look at the machine learning benchmarks. And this is their system that includes Intel processors and NVIDIA H100 accelerators. So if we take a closer look at the top 10, two out of the top 10 systems, which is going to be number 1 and I believe number 5, use AMD EPYC CPUs. Then 2 out of the top 10 use IBM's CPU, the IBM Power 922C. So now the H100, NVIDIA's newest GPU, is in number 9, number 8, and number 3. So we can see the H100 is coming in strong, but some of the other ones also use other variants of NVIDIA's GPU. For example, number 6 uses the A100, number 7 uses the GV100, and number 10 also uses the GV100. So it is pretty impressive that 6 out of the top 10 use an NVIDIA accelerator, and just kind of showcases the strength of this company. All right, so now I just kind of want to break down the specs of each of the top 3. So number 1 was the Frontier. This is a full AMD system, and we can see when we take a closer look at cores, this is far one of the biggest, with roughly 8.7 million cores, and these cores are a mixture of their GPUs and their CPUs and everything else. But if we take a closer look at the Frontier has roughly 9,400 AMD EPYC CPUs and has roughly 37,000 GPUs. And that's very important to note, right? Because 37,000 GPUs is pretty insane. And we can definitely see why it's the number 1 position. Now, if we take a closer look at the number 2 position, the number 2 position is only a half system, but when it's finally complete, it will have roughly 21,000 CPUs. That's more than double what Frontier has, and roughly 63,000 GPUs. So that's pretty insane. That's also going to have almost 2x the amount of GPUs that the number 1 system happens. And that's why many were expecting that this one, the Aurora supercomputer, was going to be the number 1 supercomputer on the list. But unfortunately, they're still scaling it up, and they weren't able to power the full system for the testing. So we can see these are a lot of players, and that's why we can see core counts are insane. Now, in my opinion, I do believe the most impressive is number 3, Eagle. And I don't know, maybe you can say it's because I am a NVIDIA shareholder, but Eagle, if we remember the benchmarks from ML Comments, we do know that this Eagle platform is actually a system that has 10,700 GPUs. So 10,000. Remember, the current number 1 has 36,000 GPUs. So this has a third of the accelerators on the system, and made it onto here with roughly 50% of peak performance. So I can't imagine if we ever see a H100 with similar types of GPU accelerators as the Frontier or even the Aurora. Some other cool things, they do kind of give us kind of pie charts of a lot of information. And here we can see processor generation. Intel Xeon, and Intel continues to be a market share even in the top 500. AMD Zen 2 and Zen 3 also make the list, but Intel other platforms are also pretty strong in this market. So we can definitely see how Intel remains the market share leader even in the top 500. Now, if we take a closer look at the kind of top accelerator system or market share, most of the system is still using V100, which is 2 generations ago in the supercomputers, right? There was the V100, then after the V100, there's the A100, and after the A100, there is the H100. So in my opinion, this actually bodes well for companies like NVIDIA, because eventually they're going to need to upgrade those systems and add new accelerators, and those new accelerators are going going to be most likely the next generations of NVIDIA. So for me, the top 500 is not one of those lists that says, hey, look, I need to buy AMD, I need to buy Intel, or I need to buy NVIDIA. But it's just kind of overall showcases where the market is in forms of technology, who are some of the top players. AMD is my number two position, so I always get excited to see the number one. It owned the number one supercomputer, but I do believe in the next list in the next list that comes out in June of 2023, Intel is gonna dominate it with their Aurora supercomputer. We also have to see what other supercomputers are coming online within the next 8 months. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.